Welcome to the next episode of the RealLeader series. My name is Robyn Gooding, and on behalf of Matrix360 and Informa Canada, I thank you for being here, and I thank Heather for joining us for this conversation. A little bit about Matrix360. We are a talent management and advisory platform, and we are very honored and privileged to support the leaders of commercial real estate and development, as well as corporate Canada. So Heather, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Heather is the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer at Common REIT. And just to kick off this conversation, Heather, could you please share with us a little bit about your career, your journey, and the work you do and why it matters to you?
I started off as a research associate in real estate, which was not a very popular area at the time. And I actually didn't love that job, so I ended up changing roles and I moved into investment banking, which was very exciting. It had more of a transaction orientation, more of a touchdown, which I liked. I went back to research again, which was a great experience for another 10 years. And then about a year ago, I decided to leave Bay Street and took about 6 months off, joined a couple of boards. One of them was Cominar. And then this past December, so I became the Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, so joined them full time.
Amazing. So if we look back to the beginning of your career and knowing everything you know now about leadership specifically, is there something sort of at the core of leadership that you know now that you wish you had have known way back then?
That's a great question. I think a lot of it is being genuine and treating people the way you want to be treated. And I think maybe at the beginning of my career as a young woman in a very male-dominated environment, maybe I was a little tougher than I needed to be and a little less ready to kind of be vulnerable and show myself. But I think just being to thine own self be true is probably good advice.
And so, speaking of being a woman in a male-dominated industry, would that advice be what you would share for other women today? Would it still be true for them now?
Yeah, I think you have to be good at anything, to be great at anything, you have to do what you're passionate about, what you enjoy doing, and you have to be yourself. I think you take all of who you are and all of your life experiences with you into the workforce. And so I think authenticity is a really key component of leadership.
Okay, great. And so if we can look now a little bit at your leadership style in the workplace, can you speak to your personal philosophy and how that manifests within your organizational structure?
Well, it's kind of new in terms of how my leadership style is manifesting itself right now because I've only been in my new role for about exactly 90 days. So I'm managing a much larger team than I'm used to managing, and I really enjoy that. I like managing people. And I think it comes down to being supportive of people and trying to get the most out of them. I think that a positive approach to management is important. I also do believe that you're only as strong as your weakest link, so you do have to pick really solid people. But I think generally most people respond much better to guidance and encouragement and direction than they do to threats and a negative approach.
I agree with that, and I think empathy as well as courage when it comes to leadership can really propel your team forward massively.
I think everybody makes mistakes, and it doesn't matter where you are in the totem pole. We're not always going to get everything right, and I think if you can get staff to view mistakes as learning opportunities, not as failures, but as learning moments, and to share those things and to focus really on what the solution is and how to make the team better. And it's not always easy. I mean, I think we're all predisposed to liking to complain and to, like to whine about the past. And so I think, showing that, giving people the ability to fail, I think is a really important part of leadership.
I love that. Can you think of a mentor you've had in your life that has given you opportunities to fail and really guided how you've now become as a leader?
Such a good question. I mean, I think I've had, so many different people who've influenced me over the course of my career, I can think of, people that I worked with when I was at National Bank, one woman in particular, Susan Monteith, who encouraged me to stretch a little bit, Darren Deschamps, who was there. I think even some of the people who maybe I had a hard time working for taught me things. And I think that's kind of the key thing, is you have to be your own mentor to a certain extent and seek out the opportunities to get guidance from people around you. And it's not only, I think when we talk mentor, it tends to be focused on someone who's senior, maybe within your organization, whether it's, my husband or my family or friends or even people who've worked for me. I think there's things that you can learn from all of those experiences.
Yeah. So I'd like to share some statistics with you now. According to the latest Canadian Statistics Report, 82% of the Canadian population lives in medium to large-sized urban centers, which is the highest concentration amongst the G7 countries. And according to the 2016 Matrix Real Estate and Diversity Workplace Survey, 52% of Ontario's population are women, yet only 34% of them are in leadership positions. Furthermore, self-identifying visible minorities in Ontario are 35 to 54% of the population, yet only 25% of them find themselves in leadership positions. So knowing these statistics, Heather, can you speak to any challenges that you've personally witnessed, or anything that you can speak to help us overcome these barriers for women and people of color?
Yeah, I think it's always hard to be different in any kind of environment that's, homogenous. I think there's been a lot of change in my lifetime in terms of seeing more women and diversity within, the real estate space and within, Bay Street. And part of it also is taking it in your own hands. If you're I guess I was going to say odd man out, but I guess it's odd woman out. Part of it is also being approachable and inserting yourself into, groups and situations. I don't think that there's always some grand plan to exclude people. It just happens structurally, group dynamics and things like that. So I think nudging in a little bit yourself is a good thing. But I do also think that we have to make an effort to identify groups of people that we'd like to see joining the industry and helping make the environment more welcoming to them as well.
And on that note, is there anything that you could say to help us intentionally drive equity in our industry?
That is a good question. I think, it's a very good question, because I think there have been efforts made and maybe they haven't been bearing as much fruit as we'd like. But I also think that we may not be asking the right questions sometimes. Like, I always found it interesting that I've been sort of one of the sole women in the room for a long time through my career, and I don't remember really getting approached and asked about what that experience was like. And sometimes maybe we're asking the wrong questions. So I think getting into the grassroots and finding out what it is that people need. And I think, issues like women and raising children and taking time off for families and whatever, and having some flexibility there and just changing the culture are critical.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's not just our industry. This is something that is cultural in Canada, and probably true for most of corporate Canada, that around that parental aspect and motherhood and the challenge that innately gives women.
Well, and the message that women can't talk about it, and that you have to be fearing for your job and that kind of thing. So yes. Part of it is, the environment, but part of it is also what we're doing to ourselves by not sort of, laying out what our needs are. And right. I mean, some of it is just changing what we value in the workplace, people would be given cars, years ago as a benefit because that was a very male thing. Right. Well, maybe young women would prefer an equivalent dollar amount of nanny services. Yes. And it's those kind of simple things that can make a big difference in making a workplace more accessible.
And I think you make a really good point about welcoming women into that conversation to speak for themselves to leaders about what that accommodation looks like.
Well, and I think that's an issue that people don't talk about a lot either, is that a lot of men are afraid to even put the issues on the table because they're dancing around the subject. And I think that just having an honest conversation as a starting point makes a big difference.
I agree. So let's think now, what makes you really excited about your job? What kind of gets you up in the morning? What gets you motivated to get your suit on and make waves in your industry?
You know what? I love my job. I do get up in the morning with spring in my step. It's a 20-minute walk to work, and I put my happy Spotify playlist on and walk to work. What gets me up in the morning? There's so much exciting stuff going on at the company. We're in a period of transition. We've had a little bumps along the way, and I'm just really, really excited about being a part of positive change there. And I would say the team, I've got a great team of people who are smart and dedicated and hardworking, and I'm really looking forward to building the future of Cominar with them.
That's amazing. We're excited to watch it unfold for you.
Thank you.
And I have a couple questions for you just to wrap up here. If you can speak to your footprint or your legacy, what you hope that looks like, what would you say?
Oh gosh. From a leadership perspective, I hope that I've elevated people up, or that I will, over the rest of my career as well, a next generation of great leaders. I hope that I've been fair but demanding and challenged people to bring their A game. Those would be the things.
Those are great. So one word to describe your leadership essence, what would it be?
I'm going to go with passionate.
Passionate?
Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, on behalf of Matrix360 and Informa Canada, thank you for being here with us. And Heather, thank you for being part of this amazing conversation. It's been a privilege to interview you. And if you'd like to learn more about Matrix360 or Informa Canada, please take a look at our website. Thank you so much.
Thank you.